Hello, and welcome to a short video on how to do a pull request for PnPjs, though this would very much apply across any of the repositories related to the Patterns and Practices program, these same kind of steps. But so to get started, we're just going to come up with an idea, and one of the great ways to come up with an idea is to check out the issues list. So here's the issues list for PnPjs, and we're just going to go down real quick and we're going to pick an issue. I've already pre-picked out this issue, export SP batch, but you could come up with your own ideas, of course, find an issue to help out with in the list, however you might want to go about that. And now in my case, I'm going to go ahead and assign this to myself because I have those rights in this repository. But if you can't do that, you can always come in here and leave a comment and say something like, you know, I'm going to work on this. And that will help us so we don't duplicate our efforts or step on anybody's toes. And the other thing I'm going to do, which you wouldn't have to do, but I'm going to change the label from investigate to in progress. Let me find it there. And so that's in progress now, and that kind of lets people know this is being worked on, and lets us know to not come and also work on it, or other folks, so we don't get the kind of cross work. So, but looking at this issue, you know, we always like to look at the feedback we get from folks. So we'll take a look and we'll say, okay, so what's this person want to do? They want to return the SP batch object, and they need those typings. And from this issue, I guess we're not exporting that class currently. So that's a quick change to make. We're happy to do it. So I'm just going to copy SP batch. And I've got the library pulled up over here, and I have forked this off the main repository into my own, under my own namespace, under my Patrick-Rogers GitHub namespace or organization, however you want to call it. And I've gotten the latest, but one of the things you can do before you start is always pull from the upstream to make sure you've got all the latest changes. And this will, one, make sure you have all the latest changes, but two, it can make it a lot easier when you go to merge. If your fork might be out of date or you're working on a certain branch that's out of date. And so the other thing we want to do is we want to look at we could create a branch here, or we could just work in this dev branch. And because we're working from a fork into the master, I will sometimes just work on the dev branch unless I'm working on a specific feature. How you want to approach that is really up to you. And so we'll come in here, and the first thing, if we're going to make a change to the code, we want to do is find where we want to make this change. So I'm just going to search for SP batch. And I found a ton of things, but we can ignore some of these. That's an image. So we're exporting this class out of batch. That's good to see. So here's where the actual class exists. So that's great. But now we want to make sure we export it. And I happen to know the library pretty well. So I know that the way all the exports work is for each package, there's a file that has the same name as the package. And that controls all of our exports coming out of each of the libraries. Just to sort of show you that under common, if we look under source, there's a common.ts, and that handles all of the exports coming out of the common library. And that's sort of how we've set things up. It makes it a little bit easier for us and hopefully for all of you if you're looking to make contributions. So we want to add the export for that class here into the exports out of this module. And I'll just scroll down. You can see there's a whole bunch of exports. This is all the exports for the SP package, which is a lot of things. And so this is in the batch.ts file or batch module, and depending on the terminology you want to use. So I'm just going to search here, and it looks like we're not exporting anything out of the batch currently, which is totally fine. So we'll just come in here and add it. And the way to do that is just an export statement. And we're going to export from the batch module like that. And I'm just going to hit for the IntelliSense and pick SP batch. Format document. You'll see I've got a little red squiggly here. You could show the fixes, fix the missing trailing comma. There you go, all set. So we've added our export for SP batch, a nice easy change, but we want to kind of test this. And one of the easiest ways to test your changes, and this is for big changes, small changes, one of the things we've done is we've set up this debug folder. And if you haven't looked at this before, there's two subfolders here, one for launch and one for serve. And the launch folder, I have a bunch of extra files that I've used, but you'll see a main file and an SP file and a graph file. Those will be part of the actual package. And then these are ones I've set up just for my local testing, different things I've been working on. This helps me do testing of issues and stuff quickly, or keep some sample code around, for example, client-side pages. But I have this any module, and it has just a bunch of junk code in it. But what I want to do just to test this is first I'm going to go to main, and I'm going to update this to pull in my any module here as the code that's going to be run for main. And I can come in here, and so here we actually are already importing a few things from the SP project. So I'm just going to type here, and we get SP batch is being exported now. So we see that change has actually come through. So we've essentially proved now that our change worked. In this case, we were just adding an export, so that's pretty easy to see. But we could also come down here, and then we can use these things then in code. So we could say our batch is going to be an SP batch, and we're going to get that from SP web create batch, and that will give us our typing on this object is now typed as an SP batch, and we can see that is importing correctly from the SP library. So that's a quick, and then we could do our batch operations, so we can execute these things, we can add to them. Although we don't generally operate on the batch object directly, we would do things like SP web in batch, give it the batch, and then get those values, right? So we could do something like this. And that works great. But so we've proven that our change works. And so we want to now get that pushed up and make an actual pull request. So this is, I think, the part folks might have a little more confusion around or be a little more unsure. I know, I'll admit, when I was starting out with Git, it's very confusing. It's a little scary in a way, right? Because it's a new system, you've got to learn it, and it seems like when you do stuff, it's very final, and it seems very easy to break things. But with a few simple steps, you can create a pull request, and it's really not that hard, and I would encourage all of you to give it a try. If not for PnPjs, please do for us, but for other libraries you might use, other projects you're involved in, the folks that are maintaining them absolutely appreciate your assistance and your help if you have ideas for making things better. So one of the things I'm in Visual Studio Code that's nice is they have this source control, which is shown by this little branchy icon over here, and you can actually click the files and review your changes, and you can actually right in here discard some changes. So I never want to check in my changes to main. That's kind of a shared example file. So I'm just going to discard those, but then I can look at, here's our package here. We've got our export of the SP batch. We can see that was added. So the left is the original, the right is our changed file or our local copy in the working tree. And so that's really great. And now I'm going to switch over to the command line because I think that makes it a little clearer. So here I am, whoops, CLS. Here I am in my fork, and you can see this is turned red, so that gives me some changes. And the first command I want to show you is git status, and that will tell you what's going on this particular branch, what changes you've made, what things are either staged or unstaged. And you can read this, and it pretty much just spells out what's going on. So in this case, it's saying changes not staged for commit. And so what that means in Git terminology is we've made some changes to this file, but they're just sitting here locally, and we haven't said we're going to commit them or push them yet. If you're unsure about changes or working on things, it's easier to not commit them, than to uncommit them, though you can always uncommit stuff. We're not going to cover that in this video, but just to keep in mind, I'll typically work on my changes, do all my testing, make sure things are good. Of course, we all make mistakes, but I'll do my best, and then I'll commit things, and that tends to keep the flow a little bit easier. So the first thing I'm going to do is a command, or the second thing, I guess I did get status first. We're going to do get add, and I'm going to put a period here, meaning get add everything in this folder. I could put specific files, so I could also type out the file here, and that works as well. So you can add individual files. Of course, that's a bad path, but so we're just going to do get add. And then there's the star, and now I'm going to do get status again, and so we'll see after doing get status, after doing get add, changes to be committed, that file now falls under a different category, and you can see it's listing the category as modified. So sometimes you'll see files are added, sometimes deleted, in this case modified. Typically your changes will be modified unless you're adding new content or deleting some files. But so we've got our modified file, and we've added it, meaning we're ready to commit it. So we've sort of staged it to be committed, right? And so we feel good about the files we've added. We've looked over things, and so we're going to do get commit. And I find it really easy to use the -m command, which allows you to attach the commit message right on the command line. The alternative is it will open up a text editor that you can edit longer commit messages and things like that in. But typically these are going to be little one-sentence descriptions of my changes. And so what I'm just going to say, adding sp batch to exports of sp library. And that's enough, right? That tells us what we've done. And for those of us that are reviewing your changes that you're going to submit as pull requests, creating these clear commit messages really helps us understand the changes you've made and what we should be looking at and what we should be testing when we do testing on our side. So I'm going to hit enter, and we've got that committed, and I'm going to say get status, and you'll see now our branch, we have nothing to commit. Our working tree is clean because we've actually committed all the changes, but you can see our branch is ahead of origin dev by 3 commits. And so 3 commits is because I've actually done a little bit of other work before this video, and we're just going to ignore that for the purpose of this video and just focus on the 1 commit we just did. So the last command we're going to use is get push. And get push is going to take all of our committed changes in our local branch and are going to push those up into our forked branch on GitHub. So I'm going to hit get push, and that's gone up. And so it'll give you a little message. If you have a lot of changes, that'll take a little bit longer, but it shows you the process it went through to commit those changes and then where it sent them to. And just to save a little time, I'm going to copy that URL. And I'm going to come here, and so this is my forked GitHub repository, perhaps. So this is my forked GitHub repository for all my stuff, and I'm going to go into the PnPjs. So again, this is forked from the main PnP library, and so we can see we get the same message here. This branch is 3 commits ahead of PnP dev. It actually lists our last commit up here for us, adding sp batch to exports of sp library. So now we want to take from our fork, we want to submit a pull request back to the main branch. And then the easiest way to do that is hit this new pull request button. So we'll give this a second to load up. And there's a couple things we want to do to be good community contributors and provide a little bit of details to help those of us reviewing these changes have a little bit easier time looking at this stuff. So we're going to come in here, and the first thing you're going to see at the top is it's saying it's going to check, and it's going to say you're able to merge. And the only time you'll really see that it'll say you're not able to merge is where maybe you've got a much older fork, you didn't do that update at the beginning with git pull, things like that. And you can always then fix that, and you can actually re-push into your fork and update your pull requests or create those pull requests. But this is great. We're able to merge. These branches can be automatically merged, which is great. You can actually now, it'll give you a diff of all the different files. So this is actually the change we're focused on. We added that export here to the sp.ts file. And so I'm going to create a pull request with all my changes. So now this is where you can really help us to review your changes and review your updates by giving us nice, clear instructions as to the changes you've made. So I'm actually just going to copy this right here. So adding SP to there. And this isn't really a bug fix. This is a new feature. So we'll say a new feature. And then down here, this is optional. This category, please do give us the category. That helps us understand sort of what's coming in. But related issues, so this is actually going to fix or address number 213. And so I'm going to tag it here and say 213. You actually get a little prompt there to help you. And then it says, what's in this pull request? So please describe these changes. And we have added SP batch class to the exports of SP library as mentioned in, and we're just going to tag that same issue again. It's nice. It helps us again to link things together. And then we can go ahead and delete this section after you've read it. So this is a pretty small pull request, a pretty small change. So this is sufficient. We don't need a ton of detail, but we've clearly described the change we've made, and this lets us, as the reviewers, say what's happened. We've added this class to the exports. Great. Let's have a look at that. You can preview your changes, of course, but one of the other things you can really do to help us out is make sure if you've changed multiple files or changed how things work, kind of put the details for that in here. We don't need each change spelled out. We can look at the code, but a nice outline really helps us understand the changes that are coming in. So I'm going to hit Create Pull Request. And this will actually create the pull request against the library. And that's it. We have created a pull request against the PnPjs library. So one of the things I'll just add that really isn't for you, the submitter, to do, but you'll see when we on the core team come back and review these pull requests, you'll see us tag them with a version number. And we try and do that to make sure it's very clear what version your change will show up in. So you can see your pull request and say, all right, great, my pull request was accepted, and I can expect to see my changes in whatever version might get tagged on it. In this case, 115, which is actually going to go out this week. So got our changes in, we got our pull request. So hopefully that has outlined how things work, made things a little simpler, and I would encourage all of you to submit pull requests. We really appreciate your contributions and look forward to seeing the great work y'all can do. Thanks. Talk soon. Bye.